Okay, we are going to talk about showing and telling, filtering, and exposition. Why are we going to do this? Because you are writing post-apoc, and post-apoc is very character-driven and action-driven. And one of the reasons that I steered you away from reading Melt is because it really is an outlier. The amount of interiority in Melt is super not typical for the genre. So I want us to be right in the middle of the scattergraph of post-apoc for these series. And I also want you to understand some of the tools that you're using so that you can make a decision about how you're going to use them. All right, how to think about showing and telling. You've heard this all of your writing career, and you know that one is preferred over the other. We're supposed to show, not tell, and why. Let's back up. What are they? So if you think in movie terms, show is the characters engaging with each other in scene, acting and reacting and being part of the moment. Tell can happen a few ways. Tell is voiceover. So if you've got a narrator talking directly to the audience, then that's telling. If a character turns and faces the camera and makes some kind of a commentary, there's very good chance that's telling. And of course, we're going to think of an example where this has been brilliantly done, absolutely brilliantly done. Not everyone will like this, but Dirtbag is an example of somebody who absolutely understands what she is doing with show and tell. If you haven't seen it, then definitely not safe for work. Lots of sexual content. It's about a woman coming into her own sexual identity and sexual power. So a lot of people won't like it. It is fabulous. It's so good. She is outside her own experience when the series starts. Oh, if you haven't seen this, I will clock the time because you should watch it. You should absolutely watch it and not listen to what I'm about to say because it will spoil it for you. And it's just a brilliant piece of craft, as well as being very engaging. So I'm going to put the clock now. I'm going to start talking about Dirtbag. If you haven't watched it and it sounds like something that you might enjoy, go and watch it. Don't let me spoil it for you, and I will tell you when we're done. So we've got this character who is having casual sex with people that she doesn't much care about, and it's quite perfunctory, and she's faking it. There's definitely this fake it stuff that's going on. And during these encounters, like she's literally having sex on a counter in her cafe, she turns to the camera and talks to the audience while she's having sex. So that's a very disembodied thing that she's doing, right? She's not in the moment, she's not in the experience, she's actually looking away and joking about it and making fun of it and saying how shit he is, and then she goes back into the scene and she's lying to this character who she's had sex with, but we know she's lying because she's just been speaking to us about what's going on. And there are, I just want to tell you the whole thing, it's so good. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is showing versus telling and why this works and how when you know what you're doing, you can play with it. She has these encounters. I'm going to cry. It's so moving. And the more emotionally involved she is, the less she tells, the less she turns to the camera, the less she comments on her life as an outsider. She's in it. And she eventually falls in love. And there is a magical moment where that connection happens and she makes no comment at all to the viewer. And that's because the writer understands that we are in that scene, not outside that scene. Now, we're not going to be using that, but I'm just telling you as a narrative technique that you can use telling in certain situations if You want to distance us from what's going on. Maybe there's some exposition that gets us sorted out at the beginning of a scene. Maybe we are, I think Flannery was the one who says, take out all the boring bits. So we can use that to get through the boring bits, or I've been talking to Courtney about this today, to jump the temporal gaps. You're going to have temporal gaps, and telling can be your friend in those moments. So let's say you've got Joe, and Joe is running into the fires and taking care of a bunch of stuff, and then we get to the cliffhanger at the end of the scene, and then we switch to Karen. And Karen is doing something, and she is living her life, and stuff is unfolding, and things are getting worse and worse because it's post-apoc. And she gets to the end of that scene, and then we've got Fred. And Fred does some stuff, and things happen, and they're somewhat tangentially related, or they're going to be related later on in the series, otherwise we wouldn't be focusing on these characters. And then we come back to the first character, but there have been 2 chapters between when we last saw him and when we see him again. So time has passed. There has been time going on for the reader experientially as they physically read the book. Time has been passing for them. And so they will enter into the fiction with you that time has passed for Joe. And when Joe appears back on the scene again, you do not need to tell us what he has been doing. You do not need to pick up where we left off. You can squash that down to just what we need to know. All of the boring bits are gone, and you get right to the interesting bit, and you maybe use a little bit of exposition to tell us what happened, what he did, to resolve something, not the big thing obviously, but to resolve something that was going on in the first chapter, and you bring us back in and time has passed. So you can literally say something like, I spent the entire 3 days working out if leaves of 3 were good for toilet paper. Right? They're not, by the way. So there are times when telling can be your friend. In post-apoc, you mostly want to be in the scene, not telling us about either telling us what's going on, or telling us how they're feeling, or telling us about their reactions. They're all tells, right? And the brain science currently is that our brains at a certain level can't tell the difference between reading about something happening and having something happen to us. We actually go into that scene and we're experiencing that as the character. So you want to get as close to that experience as you possibly can. You want to be in the skin of the character, and anything that takes you out the skin of the character is something that you want to avoid strategically, which takes us to filtering, right? So filtering language, it's when you first hear it, you're just like, oh, fuck off, really? I gotta... Because it just sounds just bog stupid. It really, truly does. But see, hear, think, feel, notice, assume. I wrote a couple more down. Feel is the really, really big one. Feel, felt, knew, know, think, thought, seem, begin. Don't you know what to use begin? Let's see the other ones that I wrote down. And the idea is, of course, I hid them from myself. We covered all those. So, anything where you are making the reader look at the behavior of the character. So if a character looks, you're watching them look instead of being inside their eyes and seeing what they see. So if you say, she looked at Joe's scrawny ass, then we are watching her looking. If you're in first or close third, as most of us are, then you can just comment. You're in her POV already. You don't need to say she looked at, she saw, she noticed, she realized. You can just say Joe's scrawny ass was hanging out the back of his pants. And that's her POV. And you are still inside it. You're inside her experience. You're not showing us, oh God, fuck, that's a bad way to put it, isn't it? You're not forcing the reader to look from the outside to watch the behavior of what they're watching instead of simply being inside the experience of what they're seeing. Does that make sense? I'm going to put a list up in the forum. We're already at 10 minutes. How is that possible? All right, I'm going to push you pretty hard on filtering. Not because you can never use it, you can. Oh, an interesting little tidbit. So when I was teaching Story Genius is all about the feels, right? It's all about the character's misbelief and how they're reacting. And it was through Author Accelerator, Jenny Nash's operation. And Lisa was teaching it, and there were a bunch of us developmental editors who were teaching it privately to their students. And sorry, one-on-one, not privately. And I brought up filtering. So, if we're inside all the fields, then how do we talk about emotion? How do we talk about she felt? She noticed this happening. This began inside her. And Lisa Cron had never heard of filtering. And what Jenny Nash said was, oh, that's really sophisticated. You don't need to worry about it. So they didn't actually explain it to any of the writers, but it's crucial. If you do not want to be flagged as a novice writer who doesn't know what they're doing, you need to cut the kind of filtering that you're doing and deliver an in-person experience for most of your readers. Unless you're writing Fleabag, which we're not. All right, shoot me questions. I've got a ton more to say, but I'm going to push you really hard on filtering. I'm going to push you really hard on show versus tell, and I'm going to show you those places where you can use telling or exposition to bridge temporal gaps so that you are tracking time without wasting time. We don't need to see anybody walk anywhere or good Lord, I turned the ignition in my car so many times on the page. All right, so I hope you're all doing well. It's looking excellent. We're getting very, very close to the starter's gun, and it's quite exciting. All right, goodbye, doom scribblers.